Hello, good morning, everyone. It's so good to see all of you and learn with all of you. Today, I'm going to be talking about digital technology and maritime domain awareness in West Africa. And I think the presentation will actually cross across the Gulf of Guinea as well. This is a contest. I will talk about why maritime domain awareness matters, technology enabled MDA capabilities in West Africa, and I dare say the Gulf of Guinea, examples of how technology is enhancing with a focus on fisheries, defining digital divide in the maritime context, and I look at the gendered nature of digital divide, the divide in practice, how it's manifesting in the region, implications of the divide. I'll make some recommendations and then conclude. I'm hoping that I'll use less than 30 minutes to allow for questions because this is actually an emerging topic that requires greater and closer attention. We are already aware of this, but on the African continent, about 90% of trade is transported by sea. The figures could be much higher. The resources, fisheries, and minerals of the region makes it attractive to state and non-state actors. So helping us make sense of why organized criminal network might even be interested in the region. And when I say state actors, we've also heard about illegal fishing and other forms of organized crime. And the people that are benefiting as state actors in the end, distant water vessels from distant water states, and therefore the state actors are implicated in such criminal activities that might have not necessarily happened in their names, but the resources and the profit goes to those states. Insecurity like piracy and other threats have led to our region, West Africa specifically, and a lot of coastal states on the continent being labeled as sea blind in the past. And this is my assessment based on years of research and engagement with policymakers and practitioners in the region. But then MDA is an effective understanding of anything associated with the maritime domain that could impact security, safety, economy, or the environment. And I'm focusing on technology because of the way that it is revolutionizing maritime safety and security and maritime domain awareness in the region. And I dare say the continent in such a way that we can no longer say that Africa is sea blind. If anything, we're now able to see thanks to digital technological tools. The problem, however, is that increasingly we've seen the level of limitations around infrastructure to be able to interdict, because what you see sometimes for it to make sense in court, you have to be able to verify. Again, because a lot of the countries have also not amended their laws in such a way that data or evidence gathered through digital tools is admissible in court. We've already heard about legal finish being a challenge in our region from the presentation from Cresmao. So you can imagine how, even though digital technology is revolutionizing things, it's allowing us to see more and even be surprised at the extent of the issue and the challenges that we face. But in terms of a legal finish, we're still not quite there because of the necessary amendments in laws are not happening or have not happened, or we're just playing catch up at this phase. And so I don't want to repeat everything that has been said, but I want to highlight the Yaoundé Architecture Regional Information System, the YARIS system, which is vital for information gathering and information sharing, and acknowledging the role that it has played in the figures that we saw from our colleague from Cresmao that highlights the reduction in incidents of piracy. In the past, it used to be that we're actually not able to communicate incidents in a way that allows nations that have access to infrastructure to interdict and then stop incidents of piracy or other threats from happening. But now we're able to share information quicker, communicate. There are still limitations, which I'm going to share later, but digital technological tools is definitely helping the Gulf of Guinea in general, but more specifically in West Africa. And then in relation to fisheries, the regional monitoring, control, and surveillance centers for FCWC, which was inaugurated in 2021 as part of the PESCAO project, and I believe SRFC also have one, but I couldn't confirm the location, which is why I have not included the year. I couldn't confirm the location and year, But depending on the document you're reading, it seems that they had theirs first before FCWC, but I'm open to this being confirmed by colleagues that are from the Sub-Regional Fisheries Commission. And then also talking about digital technological prowess. I didn't know this until last year when I presented a plenary paper at the 68th anniversary of the Nigerian Navy, uh, that Nigeria is one of 6 countries in the world operating an over-the-horizon radar capability for MDA, made possible by the Falcon Eye. This is this technological project that the Nigerian Navy has been implementing as part of the efforts to combat piracy, illegal oil bunkering, and other crime in the region. I also want to mention NIMASA's Deep Blue. A lot of you that are working in maritime safety and security would be familiar with NIMASA and the Deep Blue, which is a combination of technology and infrastructure that allows for interdiction, working in collaboration with the Nigerian Navy. And these tools have actually been credited in resulting in Nigeria being delisted as a piracy hub. You know, when you talk about piracy in West Africa, it used to be, oh, Nigeria is where the incident happens. But now, Nigeria have significantly reduced the number of incidents in such a way that it is no longer the hub, but it is also the hub. Why do I say this? Because the pirates are able to go further at sea to other countries in the region and then bring back their bounty in the Niger Delta area. So which means that even though the incident is not necessarily happening because we have enhanced, or the country have enhanced capabilities, the actual infrastructure that house pirates can also still be found in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. The presentation given by EJF, Environmental Justice Foundation, we heard about the DASE app, which fishers have used in Ghana. It's been tried in Senegal. I believe it's also been tried in Sierra Leone. Of course, there are Liberia. Of course, there are limitations, which we're also going to look at. However, patchy radar coverage, limited patrol assets, and underfunded maritime centers continue to present a challenge because, as we know, digital technology can help us in relation to vessels as much as maybe vessels have their VMS, AIS on, and you know that criminal-minded vessels would always go dark. Their interest is not necessarily to show their position, and so unless you have a radar coverage of all your maritime environment, you might not also be able to capture things. And unless you have maybe drones that is able to patrol, there are certain things you're not able to capture. So in relation to fisheries, a paper that I published with colleague Lucas from NUPI in Norway, we looked at the digital technological tools in the fisheries sector, specifically in Ghana and Guinea-Bissau, and these are some example of how digital tools that have been used, and we looked at their benefit in combating IU fishing. We looked at their limitation. I've hyperlinked the paper, which is open access, so that obviously when you get the PowerPoint, you can read further. But then why is digital divide important? Why is it even necessary for us to have this conversation? Digital divide refers to the gap between people who access digital technologies, including the internet, versus those who do not. In the context of maritime, this is obviously different in that it would mean the difference and disparity between those that are able to have access to digital technological tools, the data, able to control the materials, and then able to use it in making decisions. In West Africa, the digital divide is reflected in a couple of ways: unequal access to satellite-based radar and technology-enabled surveillance and real-time data, trained personnel, we've already heard this team, and analytical capabilities, reliable internet and communication infrastructure, and the result is over-reliance on donor-funded. So even the Yaris example that I gave is made possible by the EU. I'm going to show more that highlights that whilst digital technological tools is very important and we can see the result, it's it would appear that unless something radically different is done, either by the external actors that are supporting the region by including technology transfer clause, we might be entering an era of maritime digital technological trap where we're in a circle, we're already trapped, and there's actually no incentive of investing in our own tools when, well, others will provide it. Others have already provided it. There's already something there. So what is the incentive for your government, for your country to want to invest in something that is actually not going to be used? And I will explain this rationale soon. And in terms of talking about the digital divide in the context of gender, we find that even the disparity between how men and women are able to use data is also very limited in terms of the education, especially those in the fisheries sector, the education that they have and how they're able to access. So this is a paper that I published with colleague in 2022 that looked at ocean optimism in the era of COVID with the view of assessing how COVID is affecting people in the fisheries value chain. And we found that in the case of Nigeria, for example, women in fisheries, there's a bit lower literacy level than men, which means their ability to then understand and adapt to the use of digital technological tools will be limited. We've been listening to conversations about safety, and we also had questions relating to gender. We heard about the DASE app. And so this means if the illiteracy level is higher, it also means that even when this app is accessible to those fisher folk in the artisanal fishery sector, it is almost always going to target the men who have the basic education to utilize these apps that is available, and women are likely to be disadvantaged. I'm highlighting this to again highlight the very big importance of a gendered approach to things. People are affected differently by the same issue, and therefore applying a one-size-fits-all solution does not actually solve the problem in terms of equitably addressing the problem. But if we try to understand challenges that are facing the fisheries sector or even in the maritime sector from a gendered perspective, wherein we understand how men are affected and how women are affected, we'll be able to offer or be closer to offering a solution that addresses the different needs of those different genders. And so I'm presenting more examples of digital technological tools from our paper so that you can understand the extent of the digital divide. And the reason I'm doing this is that all these tools are based on programs that are funded by external actors. And so not that the region do not think or do not have the capacity to think and maybe understand how technology can help, but the problem is that our governments are not funding. We've heard it consistently. The theme, I guess the emerging theme or one common theme from the presentations we've heard since last week to today is the limitations in funding, in technical capacity, and then something that might present as a lack of political will. So some of the successes that we've enjoyed or enjoying in terms of digital technology is based on tools that are provided by external actors or funded by external actors or installed and serviced by external actors, which is why thinking about a way forward, we have to be thinking very importantly about a clause on technology transfer. It's very important. So it then means that it becomes very challenging. So for example, I want to give the example of Yaris, which is funded by the European Union, and it is due to expire this August. The expectation then is that the regional states have to take over. And there's been conversation, the EU have been lobbying, even they hired someone from the region and others working in the project to go and talk and sensitize regional government on the need to take over this, because currently the data is housed in Portugal. However, even though we have this system for reporting and have had for a very long time, maybe a couple of years, maybe 3 years, the challenge, however, is that the vessels still do not see the regional reporting center as the first point of call. They will rather still report to IMB in Kuala Lumpur or the m.gov in France and England? What is the implication? I mean, we can talk about regional capabilities or limitation in regional capabilities, but you cannot expect an incident that is happening in Ghana, instead of reporting to Zone E that is close by. Even with the limitation in assets, they might be able to interdict quicker if they get the information. But you send to Kuala Lumpur, you send to France, and then they send to the region. By the time this information comes, the pirates or whoever the criminals are might have finished what they wanted to do. And so this is a very big problem. I don't know how to quantify it in terms of the idea that there is a tool that is available in the region, but partners or stakeholders or ship owners would rather still use tools that are provided by outside entities, mainly Western entities. And so it defeats the whole purpose of even the Western partners, in this instance, the EU, funding the region in the tune of millions to establish Yaris, for instance. The question then in trying to convince the regional states to invest in it is, what is in it for us? Why are we funding this if the tool is not going to be used by partners? And unless we answer this question, I think it actually doesn't make any economic sense to say authoritatively that the region should start taking ownership of Yaris, for instance, unless we address the issue of this lack of trust that is stopping stakeholders in the shipping sector from using the tools available in the region as a first point of call. We saw the examples that were given of successful interdiction, and these are clear examples of what can happen when information comes in quick. There's a case of He Yunfeng 11. They were captured by pirates of the waters of Cote d'Ivoire. They communicated to the regional centers, worked with Nigeria and Ghana. The pirates were captured, the people were freed. There are other examples of successful interdiction because information was received on time. There's also another thing, we talk about fraud and criminality. Sometimes actually these vessels would rather report these incidents abroad because it can be verified and they have other motives. I want to cite the example of the heroic Idun. They were coming closer to Nigerian waters. They were accused of illegal oil bunkering or oil theft. The Nigerian Navy tried to stop them and verify why they are there and the documents that they have. They called the IMB to say pirates or suspected pirates. They basically called the Nigerian government suspected pirates. The Nigerian Navy suspected pirates, and then started moving towards Sao Tome and Principe, and then Equatorial Guinea. And this is also an example of cooperation and collaboration in action, because what happened through the Yaoundé instrument, Nigeria was able to communicate to Equatorial Guinea. They held the vessel, and then the vessel and the crew were later transferred to Nigeria. It went to court. It even went to ITLOS because they challenged it, saying ITLOS is the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea. In the end, Nigeria, obviously, the court ruled that the vessel was wrong. The IMB, through Lloyd's, because it was Lloyd's that Lloyd's list that published and talked about the incident. One of the conditions for dismissing the case or resolving the case was that they were going to tender an apology and rescind the incident or delist the incident as no incident. So there's been examples of actually incidents of piracy or suspected approach that has been reported to international centers that have been removed after verification that this was not actually incident. And so another challenge here then is that a lot of international centers are working but not directly in collaboration with the regional centers. So when something has been reported, sometimes they do not collaborate it, sort of confirm it with regional centers before broadcasting it. So it seems that there is an issue of trust. Is this the right one now? All right. So it seems there is an issue of trust. So I obviously updated it to show you the extent of the divide. On the one hand, data is able to flow. On the other hand, it stops flowing because maybe lack of internet or access to certain things. I've also talked about this. And so these are some of the digital technological tools that are currently available in the region. This is based on the research that I led with colleagues last year. We looked at technology and maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, and we sort of based on the questionnaire from people working in the Yaoundé architecture, the centers, and the mosques. These were some of the technology they said they were familiar with, and the number of times they mentioned it. And then these were some of them as well, and the number of times. The question then I have for you is, can you tell me what all these technologies have in common? You can see Sea Vision, you can see iSailor, and please feel free to add yours if there's one that you know that is not currently on this list. There's Skylight, there's Solata, and others. Can you tell me what they have in common? Feel free to raise your hand and answer. Use.
They are all from Europe, all of the systems.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. They are from Europe or America or somewhere else. So they are foreign, either foreign provided, foreign managed, foreign funded, foreign serviced. And yeah, so that is the whole idea of them thinking about maritime digital technological trap, because unless there's a way out of this, we might never, we might never really come out of a circle. So the analysis then is that there's over-reliance on external sources and data, information asymmetry between regional and international actors, and challenges in rapid incident response. And this is a very big issue because when it comes to infrastructure, Africa is said to hold an estimated 1.3% of global data storage capacity. And then in 2021, a report noted that Nigeria's data, about 70% of Nigeria's data is stored abroad. And sort of in terms of AI, we've talked a lot about AI, or maybe not necessarily in here, but elsewhere, about the role of AI in revolutionizing the maritime sector and responses. It has been noted that Africa produces less than 2.5% of the data that is used in training the AI. So you can also think about the potential biases that might result from this. So what is the implication? The implication is limited situational awareness. It creates a cycle of dependency on external actors and donors, again, with the caveat that unless we start including a clause on technology transfer, we will actually perpetually rely on foreign donated instruments for things, even when it's beneficial. The implication then, and I'm glad we have this example from USAID, is that when their government decide to stop their aid, we are buggered in terms of this has been really amazing in helping us see, but now we no longer have access because the government have decided to stop the support. Another thing is the way that they present their data. Remember, the fact that you're not the person in control means that you see what they show you. They might have filtered the data before showing you. I'll give an example without saying which of the tools, but one of the foreign tools that provide information, data on suspicious vessels or vessels movement in general, some of them automatically use red for Chinese vessels, right? But for the region, in the way that they have been working, red means bad, green means good. So red means you need to read further. So automatically, without having training on the use of that tool, you see red, you automatically think, okay, this is a suspicious or a bad vessel. So this sort of gives you an example. And the political dynamics and geopolitics, global geopolitics when it comes to maritime security in general. It also weakens regional capacity to enforce sovereignty and negotiate from a position of strength. We've already had the example from Crespo. It affects efforts to ensure fishery sustainability and improve coastal livelihoods. So what are the recommendations? I believe that to reverse the trend, the region should consider the following: make technology transfer a mandatory part of partnership agreements for deploying digital technological tools. It is a must, not just the region, actually the African continent. It has to be a must. We can't all of a sudden unravel the harm caused by years of colonialism. Because we also want to talk about why and how did we get to this point. It is trying to rebuild, trying to prioritize one area over the other. And so, like most countries, we're catching up. But how can we ensure that we catch up in a way that does not make us always dependent? We partner with others as we should because they have the tools, but there has to be an element of technology transfer that allows us ownership, that also allows that trust to be built so that the example I gave with, despite the fact that we have Yaris, people still have to report to outside entities. They rather report to outside entities than entities within the region that would act when they're in trouble. Public-private partnership is also something to consider, and priority should be given to open access incident information gathering and reporting. That way, government and agencies that do not have the tools might be able to receive information on things that is happening and analyze it in a way that helps them to see what threat they can prioritize, or should I say, the threat trend in their respective regions. We have to promote digital literacy and strong data sharing and embed gender and inclusion in digital transformation initiative. Reversing the trend of maritime digital divide in West Africa is simply not about acquiring new technologies. It is, or it requires that existing technologies serve all people equitably, recognizing the gendered barriers and economic disparities. Partnership that combines technology transfer, open access reporting, and digital literacy can transform maritime domain awareness and by extension ensure sustainable fisheries through improved monitoring, surveillance, and control. Thank you so much for listening.